So, Fred Guttenberg. Fred began his public life after the murder of his 14-year-old daughter, Jamie, in the horrific shootings at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School on Valentine's Day, 2018. He brought himself to attend a public vigil in Parkland the very next day, and the mayor asked him to speak, and Fred's words shook the nation. Fred may not remember it, but we actually met at a roundtable discussion called by Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz just a few weeks later in Fort Lauderdale. I can attest to Fred's passion then and since, as he has traveled the country, dedicating his life to honoring Jamie by talking about perspective, perseverance, and resilience, and by holding our leaders accountable for their actions and their inaction. He has appeared before Congress, is also a regular on television news programs, sometimes with Chris, and in online and print media. And he has recently published a book entitled Find the Helpers. Fred joins us from his home in Parkland, Florida. Fred.
I think I'm unmuted now, correct? All right. Thank you all for having me today. I'm sure I've met many of you as I've gone around the country. For sure, I've got to know my friend Chris exceptionally well. I'm beyond thankful for having her in my life. Let me start by giving you a little bit of my background. When I do these things, I don't write notes or speeches. I talk. I want people to feel what's really happening in me. And so the best way to do that is to just tell you, because, you know, people often say, I can't imagine how you feel. I hear it all the time, but you need to, because it could be you. It could be someone you love. It could be a parent, a friend, or a child that you know. And the work we do is to ensure that isn't the case. You see, a little bit about me. I'm a father who lives with guilt. I'm a father of 2 kids. My voice wasn't part of this until it was one of my kids. And maybe if my voice was part of it before that, I could have had the change in Florida before February 14, 2018 that we got, and my daughter would have been saved. You know, had some of the laws that we passed 3 weeks after Parkland been law before Parkland, like raising the age to 21, like red flag or extreme risk protection orders, my daughter wouldn't have been murdered. And so I live with guilt. It is this guilt that drives me. The first sentence of my book is, grief is love with no place to go. That's what grief is. I have my love for my daughter. It's no less today than it was before. But I'm still needing to find a way to express it. And as a father, as a parent, what do we do for our kids? We always react to what's happening. So here's my story. I'm a father of 2 children. I'll always have 2 children. I sent them to school on February 14th, 2018. And as a normal course, they were running late. I was rushing them out the door. That was typical. My son had to drive. He was the one with the license. And because they were running late, they were blaming each other and they were arguing. Very typical. And I'm rushing my kids out the door. You got to go. Got to get to school. And for the life of me, the one thing I don't remember saying as I rushed my children out the door that morning was, I love you. Because it was a typical normal morning. And I don't think I took the time to say those 3 words. I was too busy rushing them to where, as a parent, I expected my children to be safe, to learn. You know, the day was normal. It was like any other day, the typical text messages between classes, until just after 2 p.m. when my son called he said, Dad. I said, what? There's a shooter at my school. And now my son is a jokester. So you don't always know when to take him seriously or not. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, there's a shooter at my school and I can't find Jamie. And as soon as he said that, I knew he was serious because he watched after his sister like a hawk. He may joke about himself, but he would never joke about her. And I asked him where he was. And he said, I'm running, but I can't find Jamie. I need to turn around. I said, no, you don't. You keep running. I'll worry about your sister. And as we're talking, he's telling me he's hearing more bullets. And those are the bullets on the third floor that were killing his sister. And I want you to understand that, because while my daughter did not make it home that day, and while I visit my daughter at the cemetery, my son was a victim of gun violence that day too. And the families and the other students were victims of gun violence that day too. Chris, I was very thankful that you talked about the public health aspect of this, because gun violence isn't only about who we bury. You know, my daughter died on the third floor. She was the second to last to be shot. She was running down the hallway from an armed shooter, running for her life. She made it to within 1 second of actually getting away. She was turning into the stairwell when a single shot, boom, into an from an AR-15 into her spinal cord. Single shot. Because of where it hit her in her spinal cord, it immediately stopped her heart. What if it hit her in a different spot and then she spent the rest of her life paralyzed? These are the realities and the big picture of gun violence that we have to grapple with as a nation. 40,000 people per year right now are dying. And candidly, I think 2020, when the numbers come in, it's going to be worse. When Jamie was murdered, the estimate for weapons that were known to be in the streets of America was approximately 300 million. We're now looking at closer to 400 million. Okay. We're looking at, because of this pandemic, all of these new first-time gun owners who are going through terrible times in their life, who, while maybe they won't turn those guns on someone else, but they might turn it on themselves. In fact, in Florida today, the news broke that October saw a dramatic increase in the number of new gun applications. In fact, it was an all-time record. People are running out to buy guns, partly because of the pandemic, partly because they're afraid of this political environment, but they're running out to buy guns. That is not going to lead to less gun violence. Forget what the gun lobby wants people to believe. It's going to lead to more. And so, thankfully, this country did something on November 3rd. I often say this country does a terrible job of voting. And by that, I don't mean we vote for the wrong people. You can debate that with whoever you want. But what I do mean is not enough of us vote. And because not enough of us vote, we do end up with extreme positions and extreme people. And this November 3rd, people showed up to vote. And because of that, we have a president who is empathetic, compassionate, decent, civil, and who believes in doing something about gun violence, who will make it a day one priority. Together, the work that groups like Brady does, and the other groups, and people like me, together, we and my daughter, because I am her voice, are going to save lives. We are going to reduce the gun violence death rate. You know, I've never been more hopeful and optimistic. I have to be honest with you. And Chris has heard me talk about this. But because I've traveled this country, forget the noise, forget the amped up rhetoric that's happening in this moment. I meet people across this country who want to do something about this problem in the most amazing, decent, and civil way possible. It is in large part why I wrote a book about not just what happened to my family, but about the people who have become a part of my life and carried me forward. In your introduction, you mentioned the vigil that I attended on February 15th. That night, I described what happened the morning I said goodbye to my kids, but I also described feeling broken. I described how I felt that night, and I'll never forget my final words. I don't know what I do next. That's how I ended that speech that night. But I figured it out because of amazing people who stepped into my life to lift me, to carry me, to embrace me, but also to lift, carry, and embrace my wife and my son. And so I don't get my daughter back. I'll always have to go to a cemetery to be physically close to her. But my daughter had a favorite saying. She was a competitive dancer. And this was the saying that motivated her, and it motivates me now. Dreams and dedication are a powerful combination. And I have a dream of ending the gun violence epidemic in this country. And with the amazing people like you and others across this country, I am dedicating the rest of my life to doing that. We are going to do it. Our children, our parents, our friends, our cousins, our aunts, our uncles, we're going to get to a place where we can step outside without fear of being shot. I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight with you. Our lives are worth it. We're going to do this. And so hang on, because this next year, we're going to get gun safety legislation signed. So with that, I appreciate you having me on tonight. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.